Let's pause to look at a very important subject that'll greatly affect fish and our fishing. I speak of climate change. And the truth is, most fisheries experts believe it's going to have a huge impact on some species, especially cold water fish like trout.
Climate change is basically drying out our forests earlier in the year, and that makes them more susceptible to fires. And I think what we've seen in the western United States since probably about the mid-1980s has been an increase in the intensity and frequency of fires. And of course, wildfires have always been a part of our western forests, but this combination of the fire suppression work that I think we've done in the past is kind of meeting climate change sort of head on, and that's producing bigger fires and more intense fires. And when you combine, in a lot of the West, when you get back to trout, our native trout populations, our cutthroat trout, and in the Southwest, Gila trout and Apache trout, a lot of the populations are much smaller than they were historically, and they're restricted to small segments of streams in the forest. And when you combine a big, intense wildfire, that can actually cause the elimination of those populations. You can get a lot of sediment pouring into those trout streams after the fire. So we've essentially moved from where wildfire is a natural disturbance that those fish have adapted to, but because of the change in fire regime coupled with the fact that a lot of the habitats are already degraded and the populations are fragmented in these small stream systems, that's a tough thing for those fish to now deal with. Earlier runoff, less snowpack, that's going to mean some really big changes for a lot of our mountain streams. The timing of the spring runoff, it's going to be occurring much earlier. We're likely to have more rain on snow events, which can mean some winter flood problems. And then, of course, basically, if that snow is melting sooner and running off sooner in the year, that means that our stream flows in the summer are going to be just that much lower. They're going to be more, that's going to be a much more concern and is going to, kind of increase drought problems and that sort of thing. So all of these kinds of problems are all kind of connected, and climate change is going to make a lot of the problems that these fish deal with just basically a lot worse. We think that we're already seeing a lot of effects of climate change, and just for example, I was reading a report recently that some scientists had documented that mayflies were emerging earlier, these aquatic insects that are such important food for trout, that because the snow is melting sooner and the spring flows are occurring earlier, the mayflies are actually coming out earlier than they would normally. And an interesting thing about that is as they come out, as they emerge earlier in the year, they actually emerge at a smaller size. The females, mayflies, then produce fewer eggs, and it has some sort of cascading effects on the fish itself. We think that climate change is not only real, but in fact, it's already upon us, and we're already starting to see in terms of bigger wildfires in the forest and less snow in the mountains and earlier runoff in the streams. Salmon are going to be impacted perhaps even to a greater degree. They're going to get kind of a 1-2 punch. One is going to be the effects in their freshwater spawning streams, and they're going to face a lot of the same kinds of things that we've been talking about relative to native trout. But they also, of course, have the big migrations and then the ocean conditions they have to deal with. And in the oceans, we're already seeing some climate change effects in terms of changes in ocean currents, and that affects nutrient availability along our coasts, and that's going to directly impact salmon and steelhead populations. And I think that's an area that, frankly, we haven't seen enough study yet because the ocean conditions are fairly complex, and it looks like that salmon and trout are going to be pretty heavily impacted in those ocean conditions, and as those ocean conditions change for the worse and food supplies are dwindling in the ocean and that kind of thing.